Hey everyone, I'm Gracie. Welcome to the Grace of a Military Child podcast. The world should know how unique military children are. We may look like normal children on the outside, but we go through some pretty extraordinary circumstances that shape us to the leaders we are today. Keep listening to hear the incredible journey this week's guest has been on. Hi Enrique, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Doing great, Gracie. I'm happy to be here.
Good. Yes, I'm happy to have you. So tell me a little bit about your parent who served and kind of what that experience was like growing up.
My dad was the primary one that served. So he joined right out of high school. And we're from Puerto Rico. So in our family, it was kind of a patriarchal type of a situation where the father makes the decisions. So in our family, it was my dad's dad who was making the decisions and determined your career path. My dad wanted to be a musician. My grandfather wanted my dad to be a pastor. And somewhere along the way, my dad decided, since I don't get to do what I want to do, I'm not going to do what you want to do. And he joined the Army.
Wow.
Yeah. So he enlisted right out of high school. And he knew my mom from high school as well. So they both up and moved to a different location. I'm the second born of the four kids, and have an older sister who's 3 years older, she was born on the island. I was the only one not born on the island, which brings up a whole different set of issues. Because I'm the American cousin or the Army cousin or sibling that wasn't born on the island with everybody else. But yeah, it was a lot of fun growing up. Well, a lot of our duty stations were overseas. So I was born in Panama. And then not too long after I was born, we went to Germany or Italy and then Germany. And then kind of back and forth between Italy and Germany a few times, and then over to Okinawa, and then finally coming stateside when I was in middle school.
Wow. So most of your kind of elementary years and like younger years were spent overseas.
Right.
What was that like growing up in, completely different countries where, now living in the United States, must be so different?
It is. It was a great experience. I didn't know any different. So I didn't know that that's not what families did, that they picked up and moved every year to 2 years, or that even when we weren't moving to a different duty station, that families didn't just up and move every 6 months to a year anyways, just to stay in practice. That was just kind of our MO. But experiencing the culture, experiencing the life. My dad was one where he didn't like to cluster with other soldiers or other military families. He liked living off base and really embedding himself and embedding the rest of us with the local culture and the people, so that we were really enmeshed with what was going on, a part of the community.
That's awesome. So where you mentioned quite a few places, but how many times did you move? Where exactly did you live? Things like that.
Oh my gosh. Too many moves to count. I remember, we were stationed in 3 different places within Germany. We were in Stuttgart, Frankfurt, and Ulm. I don't remember exactly where we were in Italy. We were in Okinawa. We were on, Camp Lester on Okinawa. My dad worked at Camp Lester. We lived on Camp Foster, and I went to school on Kadena Air Base. And my mom worked at Okuma Beach, which was a military reserve about an hour and a half away.
Wow.
So it was just we're all over the place.
Yeah, that's insane. Did you kind of enjoy living in a different country more than living in the States, or was there a specific country you enjoyed living in the most?
I did. Germany was a lot of fun. I was pretty young then. So it was just a great opportunity where I got to spend the most amount of time with my dad. We had never seen snow before. So just having that experience and that exposure for my older sister and I, that's where I learned to ride a bike. So a lot of those fun memories are right there in Germany. But Okinawa was definitely the most fun.
Yeah.
Got to make some good friends, local friends, military friends, and just go out and roam and explore the island and meet a lot of really great people. And that's where I fell in love with history as well. Just there's so much history there and culture and so much to learn.
Yeah, I'm sure. You mentioned schooling. How, and living off base, did you go to off base schools most of the time, or were you on base, or how did that work with, moving and living in different countries and things like that?
Yeah, living in different countries, we still went to Department of Defense schools. And one of my parents either had to take us to school or we took public transportation to get to school.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of an adventure all by itself, being brand new to the country. And I should also state that neither of my parents spoke English.
Mm.
It wasn't required in Puerto Rico to learn English because it wasn't a language that anybody used on the island. So when my dad joined the Army, he knew the basic commands from a different group that he was in that was kind of similar to the Boy Scouts, but not quite the same thing. It's called Pathfinders. So because he was able to follow the basic commands, he was able to get into the Army as long as he committed to learning English. And my mom didn't speak a lick of English. So it was challenging for her to go from her small town in the southwest part of Puerto Rico to a foreign country where she couldn't speak that language, on top of not really having a command at all of the English language to be able to communicate. So once kids came around, it was a blessing because our role was to really be the ambassadors of what America is meant to be and what we could be. But then also we could help her with English and help translate and help her navigate.
Wow. I couldn't imagine that, living in a different country that speaks a totally different language. And then, in those areas of like Germany and Okinawa where you have, a completely different culture, but you have that military presence. And so it's kind of like, kind of a little bit of America, right where you are. And so again, English is a huge language there. So I couldn't imagine not knowing it and then not even knowing the next language of the country.
Right. Yeah. And the beautiful thing about that, just like you mentioned, it's a little bit of America. So you have people from all over the world, from all ethnicities, from all socioeconomic classes. So once you get on base and go to the community centers and start to connect with other people, you see, oh, I recognize my language, or I recognize the pattern of speech that sounds like they might be from my home or from my island. Then you start to kind of gravitate towards each other and establish some of those connections. So she was able to do that and kind of adapt and forge a path through that while learning English or leaning on others to help learn English or waiting for us kids to help her translate.
Yeah. And, those are some of the struggles that, as military families we face, but you don't think about much. You really don't think about it. And not knowing languages and living in another country that, doesn't speak your native language is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then going from one foreign country to the next, where you just have to kind of purge that previous language and try to grasp that next language as quickly as possible and figure out, okay, in this country, they did this, here are all the different customs, here are some of the different traditions. What are some of those same things in this new country that we're in so that we're not offending our hosts and so that we are respectful and that we're, being good representatives.
Right. But it makes it interesting too and creates like well-rounded individuals, because you experience so many different cultures, so many different cities and places and countries and those customs and traditions that you're just so accustomed to, once you get somewhere, you're like, okay, now let me figure out this place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's helped me quite a bit in my career, and as I meet different people all around the world. So professionally, uh, I didn't go into the Army. I wanted to at some point, but had some medical issues and wasn't really able to go in. And then my dad said, I've served almost 30 years. That's enough for the whole family. Just focus on college, focus on building up from there. Don't follow the same path, because I've served enough for all of us. So I ended up going into the private sector, worked in corporate America, but I chose global companies and traveled the world. So I got to kind of still feed that wanderlust. Traveling quite a few different places, and every now and again would get to bring my wife along or bring family along with me so that they could experience some of those same things and take them off of the beaten path to different areas that they otherwise wouldn't get to experience because tourists generally don't go that route. So it's been, great experiences, great opportunities to meet additional people. And the people I interact with generally find, oh, wow, you're so well-rounded, you're so open-minded. You make a conscious effort to welcome and embrace people from different cultures or people who are different than you. Well, I recognize that I myself am different and we're all different. So as long as we're able to be respectful of one another's differences, we can find common ground where we can all share and build something really good together.
Yeah. And, living that military life, like you said, really prepares you for that outside world, that travel, that, being accepting of, the world around you, the people around you, and not just being like, oh, this is different. Okay, this is not, this is not me. We're just going to move on and, keep going. Or, even not accept it and, risk offending, people of another country. And it's something that you learn really quickly as a military family, as a military child, a spouse, the service member. You learn that really quickly to be accepting and to, not just cut someone off. You learn those lessons really quickly.
Absolutely. And then you just kind of build in that awareness of your hand gestures or some of the different words you use, or whether you look someone in the eye or not, or how you greet them, or do you greet them or do you greet their partner? There's quite a few different nuances that could be considered offensive that in normal American culture is people just aren't aware of.
Yeah, for sure. What was it like? So how old were you when you moved to America?
Let's see. I was about 12.
So kind of what was that transition like from living like 12 years overseas in foreign countries and then, finally coming to America and, experiencing the American culture?
That was challenging. It's really challenging because we were in Okinawa at the time, and then went from Okinawa to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and went to regular public school. So just making that transition from Department of Defense schools to public schools, had to go through testing, and I couldn't even understand what the guidance counselors or the teachers were telling me, because it was a dialect I had never heard before and a cadence I wasn't familiar with. So that was hard.
Right.
And my pattern of speech and my accent was kind of mixed up. It was a Spanish accent mixed with Japanese and German. So it was kind of a hodgepodge of different things because I picked up a few different dialects over the years, and They weren't quite sure of my command of English either, even though at that point didn't speak Spanish. I just had the accent because my parents spoke with a thick Spanish accent.
Right.
So that was a tough transition. And then from moving so many different times, making and losing friends, I became more introverted, where I just stopped putting myself out there to make new friends because I knew, well, I'm going to be moving in a year. So what's the point?
Right.
I'm just going to focus on doing my schoolwork. I'm going to go to school, going to go home. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. And, to an extent, like that's normal and that's typical and that's okay. But, it's hard to be able to put yourself out there and to constantly be putting yourself out there. Every single move, every single, year or 2 years that you move, it's hard to put yourself out there. And then, you have to do it all over again and do it all over again. But then it's like, I always found it fun. I only moved twice, so I didn't move much. I didn't have to make new friends much. But I found it fun each and every time because I could meet new people. I could have new friends. I could, do all these new things, experience these new places and, with these new people. But then, it is hard. Moving is a struggle. And, if you do the on-base schools, the DoD schools, you've got that constant overturn of students coming in and out. I believe it's somewhere around like 50% overturn each and every year. So half the students leave, half are new the following year. And, that is such a struggle in itself, too.
It sure is. It sure is. So that was quite the change because there weren't that many of us who were military kids that were in the public school system. And there are so many different public schools that we never saw each other because we were dispersed all around the metropolitan area. And it was just kind of fascinating that I would get into a class and going to a fine arts magnet school that was from 5th grade through 12th grade are the grades that were at the magnet school, 500 kids total. And some of these kids had known each other since kindergarten and had gone to school together ever since then. So me coming in 8th grade, I'm an automatic disadvantage because they already have their groups, they already have their niches. Nobody's getting in. Right. So it's just all about the school, and they're telling stories, they're getting together and doing all these things. And I'm just asking myself, wait, when did this happen? Oh, that was in kindergarten or that was 1st grade. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's definitely hard, going into those public schools and, saying, hey, I'm the new kid. Because that doesn't happen often. It really, right. It happens, but it's not often. And then, where you have these DoD schools, you're constantly moving in and out. And so you're used to that. It's full of military kids. It's normal. But then, you go to these public schools and it's not as normal. And some bases right outside, those couple public schools right outside are full of military kids. But there are some that are empty. There's like maybe 1 or 2. And so it's like you are the outsider. You stick out, You weren't there since kindergarten. And, some people even make sure to tell you that. And it's like, okay, I already know. Like, don't remind me. I'm trying to fit in here. I'm trying my best. But it's hard. And then you're like, okay, I only have a year here. So big deal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That was my experience as well. And then the magnet school, one of the unique things was it didn't matter where you lived in the county. You were going, as long as you were in the school and you kept your grades up and you met all different requirements, you're going to stay in that school. Well, that worked out great for my family because we moved every single year.
Yeah.
And my parents divorced by that point. So I stayed with my mom. My dad moved on to South Korea and then Germany from there. So stayed with my mom, and the pattern continued. She remarried another serviceman who's also in the Army. And we still moved every single year, stayed around Fort Gordon, but had a different different address every year,
Yeah.
different bus, but got bused to the exact same place.
Wow.
So the same group of people were there. I just saw a different segment of them to get to the school.
Wow. And see, that's kind of unique. It's very unique. Like, it's not, even most military kids, it's like every 2 years you're moving, every 2 years, every year and a half, every year. And so it's like once you are moving, but you're able to stay in that same space and go to the same school, that's crazy because that does not always happen.
No, not at all. Not at all. It was very strange. And that itch to move, that never left. I still have it.
Mm-hmm.
So even after high school, I just picked a place on the map and said, okay, this is where I'm going to search to go to college. And got into college, left, never came back home. And then when things didn't necessarily work out at college, okay, what's the next place on the map? I actually went to the Amtrak train station, just put $100 bill on the counter and said, okay, pick the location.
Wow.
Tell me where I'm going to go for $100. It's like, well, you can go to Chicago for this amount. It's like, no, I've already been to Chicago. Give me someplace new.
Yeah.
Someplace different I've never been to. Okay. Have you been to Minneapolis, St. Paul? No, I haven't. Great. That's $96. Here you go. Here's your change. That direction.
Wow.
And off I went. And I've been here ever since. That was 1994.
Wow. So have you gotten the urge to move again? Are you like?
Yes. Yes. My wife is born and raised here in Minnesota. She's lived in 2 houses, her parents and ours. And after we got married and we bought a house, we lived in a couple of apartments in between, between buying our house or getting married and buying our house. And I would intentionally only sign a 6-month lease so that we had to move, so that subconsciously I could still kind of scratch that itch to that wanderlust and move. Even if we stayed in the same apartment complex, we had to move to a different apartment within the complex just so I could reset that clock over and over and over again. So after we bought the house, she just kind of pulled me aside and said, I'm not doing this in a year. I'm not doing this in 6 months. This was a pain to sign all the paperwork and do all that. So if you need to, have that itch to move or do something, you're going to have to figure some other creative solution out. So we did. So I started repainting or remodeling or doing landscape work or doing something else to change up the look or mentally trick myself into, yes, I'm someplace different.
Yeah. And it's like that psychology behind it of, just, rearranging some furniture, just painting a wall, things like that. It tricks yourself. You're like, oh, this is a new spot. This is new. This is nice. I mean, I do the same thing with my closet. I empty it all out and then reorganize it and put it all back in, and it's a new closet.
Exactly.
It's that feeling of, you constantly need something new. There's something new out there. There's something, and you can't just sit still. It's hard to sit still.
Yes. Yeah. I definitely don't sit still, always on the move.
Yep.
Never one to rest. I recognize there's 168 hours in the week, and I want to squeeze every second out of every single one of those hours. And if I'm not, then something's amiss because there's an opportunity that I'm not taking advantage of, or somebody I'm not helping, or there's something I'm not doing. I'm not serving in some capacity.
Yeah, there were always so many things that I said no to. I was like, no, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. I have to do this instead. No, I can't do that because that's not going to work with this and this and this. And then it's like, okay, I'm in college now. So it's like, I don't want to miss out on these years. And so my friends would ask me to go out with them. And I'm like, no, I have to do my schoolwork. And my mom would look at me and be like, no, you can go out with your friends. Your schoolwork will still be here. And then I go out with my friends and I come home and I'm like, I'm really happy I went out with my friends instead of, sat around and did my schoolwork, which, is still very, very important. Like, I value my school. But at the same point, if you keep saying no to these things, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to go anywhere. And so, it's a hard lesson to learn. But as a military kid, you kind of learn it a little quicker. And then, because I had so much civilian time too, I had to relearn that lesson at a point. But, the more you say no, the more you miss out and you miss those opportunities. And you never know what can come from those opportunities either.
Well, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And what I've learned is that relationships take work.
Mm-hmm.
So those relationships, those classmates that have known each other since kindergarten, well, they stay together and they continue to work at those relationships. And I'm not going to have that, but I can draw a line somewhere and just build that relationship with somebody else. And as I like to say, play catch.
Yep.
So just kind of have that communication and just that open dialogue with somebody else and just start the game of catch and turn it into long toss and then turn it into something else. And it just starts to evolve from there. But you have to start from somewhere, and it starts with saying yes.
Yeah. And even if these friends from kindergarten, they put in a lot of work to, maintain their friendship through the years. And then, a new person comes in and it's like, well, this could ruin our friendship. This could ruin the relationship that we've built. And so it's like, okay, sorry, but you need to go find someone else. And then you have to start that game of catch and be like, okay, you want to do this, you want to do this. You have to start somewhere. There always has to be a starting point to any relationship, any friendship, anything of a sort. You have to start somewhere, and you have to then continuously put in that effort, because if you don't put in that effort, then it's gone with the wind.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've gone back and tried to restart some of those friendships and relationships. And, it's taken a little effort.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, we didn't have Facebook or, mobile phones. We didn't have all these wonderful ways to connect with people. So it's taken quite a bit of effort to try and track people down. And then when I do, it's, hey, yeah, it's great you tracked me down. It's kind of creepy because we knew each other 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you tracking me down now? What do you want?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say hi.
Yeah.
Wanted to see how you were doing. Okay, great. Hi. Bye.
Yeah. And if you're not military people tend to get it more. And you can easily just search someone's name, and more times than not, you end up finding the person you're looking for. But right. If you're a civilian, and it's okay, we didn't keep in contact, it's just kind of weird now.
Yes.
Come on. This is a little weird that you were able to track me down and figure out, how to get a hold of me. And, this is a little weird now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a big difference between civilian and the military brat. We lose touch over time, and at some point can come back and just kind of pick things up where they left off, catch up, and see how life has been. Whereas in the civilian world, not so much. It's kind of the creepy, what do you want? What are you trying to sell me? Or
exactly.
Is this a kidnap thing? I'm not interested. I don't have time.
Yeah, where we can pick up just, right where we left off. We've never met before, but we were able to have a conversation. Things like that, where it's just that connection between the military family. Everyone is just, you're able to connect on a deeper level. You're able to have conversations, and you're able to, move away for so many years. You can move away for decades and then be like, oh, hey, I remember you. And then it's like nothing ever happened. But that civilian world life just keeps going. And it's like, okay, there's no time to stop and, remember those old friends, remember those people that, you used to know, or whatever it may be. There's no time for that. There's no time. You're just keep going, and you're keeping the friends that you made from kindergarten, and that's your little bubble. That's all you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure is.
Yeah. What is it like kind of now that you've lived in so many different countries? You're living in America. You're an adult now. You're not, moving around with your family. How has that transition been?
It's been a tough one because I know internally I still have that desire to just continuously move and, even change positions if I can't move or do something else just so that I can change something. Um, and I try not to disrupt the family as much. Because as wonderful of an experience as it was for me growing up, there were a lot of hardships in there too. And
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get to know any of my cousins, my aunts and uncles, grandparents, had grandparents who passed away that, okay, you're a picture on the wall.
Right.
That's my only connection with you. That you're a picture that we had that I would put up and then take down and put in a box when we moved, and then I would put back up and then take it down. I
Yeah.
didn't know any of these people, and they didn't know me. And the few times that we would actually get to visit with one another, I was the American one.
Yep.
Because I wasn't born there. My Spanish was different than theirs. I didn't have the same dialect. My haircut was different. My mannerisms were different. My style of clothing was different. I was just the oddball that didn't fit in at home, and they would tease and bully me because I was different.
Wow.
So it was similar to being in the non-military world, where you just go into the public school and, okay, you're different. You're the new kid, except it's extended family.
Yeah.
I didn't want that for them as much as I wanted that travel and wanted to extend that experience to my kids so that they would have a more well-rounded sense of themselves, and that the U.S. isn't the center of the world, that there are so many other things that can be learned outside of a textbook, that it was important for them to have a very firm foundation at home too.
Yeah. But you can still, incorporate that travel and that,
Yes.
Going to, new countries doesn't mean you have to always move there, and you can just go and visit. And I'm sure even like going back to, those German towns that you lived in, you're able to be like, oh, hey, this is where I grew up, I lived in this house, this is what I used to do in this area. So it's not as much as a touristy feel. It's more of a homey feel, even if it's for a couple days.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we do. We'll select what we want to do for vacation, and I'll give them choices. All right. I'll even put together a PowerPoint presentation. All right, for this year's vacation, here are the different choices. You pick. Where do you want to go? And then they get to pick. Okay, great. I will execute those orders.
Yeah. And it's fun then, having that time to plan and to prepare for these places. So once you get there, going back to what we were talking about earlier, you don't miss those opportunities. You don't, you're able to be in the moment instead of being like, okay, there's a life back home. Like, or, we're having to move here and, create these new friendships, start all over life again, basically. You're able to be like, okay, we're only here for a couple days. Let's make the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's paid off. They wouldn't necessarily understand it at the time when they were younger, but now that the kids are older, so kids overall, they're the eldest is 26, they have 18, 16, and then the youngest is 12. So the 16 and 18-year-old were the two that had the most experiences with our travels. And now that they're older, getting out of high school, they say, oh, Dad, I remember when we went on this trip and you talked about this or you showed us that. Can you, talk about that again? Or can you remind me of this specific experience? Or I was able to use that information and help welcome these other students. So it's definitely paying dividends for them later. So it's definitely worthwhile investments.
Yeah, for sure. And it's creating those memories and those experiences that are just irreplaceable. We say in my family too, we say it often that, experiences are worth way more than things. And, it's so true. Like, I would rather go. We did one Christmas at Disney. We live in Florida, so we're at Disney all the time. But we did a Christmas at Disney, and we really didn't do any gifts that year. We didn't, there was a couple here and there, but, we spent most of the money, and we went to Disney for the Christmas, and it was just, the best Christmas ever. It was like, we were able to make so many memories and have so many experiences that, it's not the same when you're just, sitting at home and doing Christmas. And, while that's great and all, and it's fun, and, gifts are fun too. I like getting gifts. But, it's having that experience is worth way more than an object, because, the object you can get up, you can throw it away. Like, even my phone, it's like, it's an object. Like, I have so much information stored in there, but it's an object. You can turn it off and it doesn't mean anything. And that's why I've been trying to teach myself is it doesn't mean everything. I'm in the generation of where we live on our phones, and, that's the entire world is right there, but it's not. The entire world is outside. You just have to turn the phone off for a little bit and then look around to see, you're going to miss those experiences if you're too focused on an object.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's a great way to connect with the world. It's a great place to store those memories, reflect on them. But yeah, there's a whole great world out there. If just open yourself up to them and experiences. Those are the gifts that keep on giving time and time again. Yes.
Well, the last question I always ask is, what piece of advice would you give to another military?
I would say, there's always a silver lining. So even when moving from one duty station to another, you're not just going away from something, you're going towards something else. So be grateful for the experiences that you have, everything that you've already experienced, and look forward with optimism towards whatever that next adventure is. Because you get to rewrite your own history. You get to change whatever it is. So if you didn't like who you were in this school at this place, you get to start all over again. It's a whole new, not just a whole new chapter, it's a new book.
That's so very true.
Look for that silver lining of an opportunity.
Yes. Thank you so much for being on the podcast and sharing your stories and experiences of being a military child.
Thank you for having me, Gracie. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for listening to this week's episode of Grace of a Military Child podcast. If you enjoyed listening, don't forget to follow, like, share, subscribe, review, and comment. You can also follow us at Grace of a Military Child podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram for more podcast-related content. If you or someone you know is a military child who would like to be on the podcast, please send us a message to one of our social media platforms, or you can send an email to grace.of.a.military.child@gmail.com. Tune in next Thursday to hear another incredible journey.